indeed different tenders. We're talking multi-million in different sectors, and this is what is worrying the most. Was actually allocated to one particular company, and that is Bosasa. So, with all said and done, and all testimonies submitted to the commission, I think the commission had ample time to corroborate some of the claims, some of the allegations, and here we are. We're sitting with specific names, and these are high-profile names within the party that seeks to suggest that some kind of further investigation, may it be criminal or civil, should be undertaken against such persons in order to determine finally whether indeed they did not violate the laws of the country.
Yes, and also as you mentioned, we are talking about names, we're talking about big names, we're talking about names that have made an impact not only to the ruling party or the ANC, but to the entire country. We're talking of people like the former President Jacob Zuma, we're talking about people like Gwede Mantashe, who has been named, the former Minister Nomvula Mokonyane, who's also been named, and all of them, at the end of the day, in terms of this report, have received benefits from this company, Bosasa.
No, absolutely. And that's a worrying factor, especially for those that are sitting ministers in the current cabinet. Because what this does then is that it puts pressure back at the presidency, more so at Cyril Ramaphosa's doorstep, to then start saying, could there be an alternative plan, especially now that there could be a possibility of a cabinet reshuffle? Could there be a plan B in case indeed some of these persons may be seriously implicated and may be asked to step aside? And this could be disruptive to the business of government, which then affects issues of continuity, affects issues of promoting good governance, and of course service delivery. So it unfortunately brings that part that says, where to from here? And I'm afraid it's the president that must now, amongst others, take the pressure off of these recent developments.
Yes, and one of the statements that was made by Judge Zondo was there was reasonable grounds to suspect that Mr. Zuma's conduct was in breach of his obligation as president under the Constitution, in breach of his obligations under the Executive Ethics Code, and in breach of legislation. Now, this is extremely serious, Professor Barry Hanyane.
No, it is absolutely. At the time when the very same person is faced with multiple charges and cases elsewhere, let's not forget the corruption case against him and Thales that needs to continue. So it's getting worse for the former president. From a PR political perspective, I don't think this is going to add any kind of value in terms of his integrity, and especially those who still believe that more is yet to come, which unfortunately is likely to taint his legacy.
Yes, and also this is telling us a lot about the private sector in collusion with the public sector when it comes to corruption. Because here we're talking of a company like Bosasa being awarded at least at the minimum 2.37 billion rand in government contracts between 2000 and between the year 2000 and 2016.
Well, no, absolutely. Look, the issue, the phenomenon of state capture, realities, experiences, I think we need to sit back now and appreciate the fact that certainly these things really happened. And going forward, could there be some body of knowledge? Could there be some experiences? Could there be a language itself that can be designed and devised and used to explain certain transactions, certain experiences? And the answer is a resounding yes. Some of these companies were facilitators. Some of these companies were renting agencies, making sure that they sweeten the deals between those who had the power to make executive decisions as well as themselves. I think Bosasa is right at the top. If you listen to the testimonies, various of them provided by Mr. Agrizi, for instance, you get a feel that there was a deliberate campaign to make sure that the ANC machinery is oiled towards giving into the Bosasa demand list.
Yes, and obviously these figures are actually horrific. We talk about 2.37 billion in contracts, but also in terms of the bribes. And this is what's come out in the report, where Bosasa is estimated they paid at least, at the bare minimum, well over 75 million rand in bribes over this period of 16 years.
Well, that's exactly the case. It's all about leveling the equation here. Minimum input for maximum output. And Bosasa was very clever at that as a company, obviously. It's a pity a person like Devin Woods is not with us any longer. It will be interesting to listen to his testimonies to all these allegations. What would he say? Would he agree that indeed his company was a facilitator, a benefactor at the end of the day? Or he would take a more defensive position and say, I wasn't there, I don't know, I hear these rumors. I was simply in charge of owning the company itself. But in terms of day-to-day running, I was not involved. So it will be interesting to see whether he would then accept responsibility or he would simply just transfer that to some of his peers or colleagues that he worked with. Nonetheless, indeed, we're sitting with serious issues now in terms of saying Bosasa may, and this is strong, may have colluded and of course, being the facilitator of corruption in this country.
Yes, and as you alluded to earlier on, what will be even more interesting to see what reaction we're going to get from our president, President Cyril Ramaphosa, because for far too long, there have been concerns about his inaction when it comes to matters like these, Professor Hanyane.
Well, let's go back to Sona quickly. He's asked for 4 months. I think the clock has started now. He's also asked for 100 days to respond to specific corruption cases. I think, again, the clock has started. So we're going to measure his response based on the timelines that he suggested. That come those two target timelines, we shall have seen progress made in terms of responding to some of these cases, including, by the way, allegations. So I can't wait to see whether indeed he will fulfill his promise. But one thing's for certain: look at the way in which the new appointments were done in the NPA recently, and of course compelling such members to start with immediate effect. Suddenly there is a sense of agency creeping in, which is good, but we would like to see more in terms of putting some of these high-profile cases before various courts of law in the country.
Well, Professor Barry Hanyane, we thank you this morning for coming on and talking to us this morning. We wish you all the best, and we thank you once again for your time.
Much appreciated. A splendid week ahead.
Professor Barry Hanyane, political analyst, against the background of State Capture Report Part 3 that has been released. The time is just gone 9:34 a.m. We come back, we'll be joined by leader of the Al Jama Party,